So in the beginning of section 2.1, which is about quantitative variables, they look at a study where they ask people, do they believe in true love? Is there one true love for each person? So I just created this survey where I'm going to ask you guys, is there one true love? And the responses for this survey are, yes, there is, no, there isn't, or I don't know. So if you could go to the chat and check out that link to this page and then make your choice and then submit it, we'll get some data that we can play with together. So I'm going to say no. Submit. And let's see, I thought I had it set to show you guys the results. Let me fix that. So what if I reload that? Okay, so if you already filled it out and it didn't show see previous responses, refresh the page and you should get another link here that says see previous responses. And so far, let's see, 14 people filled it out. How many people do I have here? That's almost everybody. Let me refresh it. We've got 17 responses. Okay, so that includes me. Cool. So everybody's filled this out. So what we're looking at here, again, is just qualitative data, but we have a summary of it where we get some numbers. So remember, we want to be careful. Just because we're given a percent doesn't mean the data was quantitative, even though the summary is a quantity. So the data is a yes, a no, or an I don't know. So we have a table filled with that. So the next thing I'm going to do is share that data table. All right, so back here where I created the form, Google shows me a response page similar to what you saw, but mine's a little bit different because I'm the owner of the survey, and I can have Google put all of those responses into a spreadsheet for me. And so I'm going to get that spreadsheet and then share it with you all. So here's the data that we have so far. And let's share. Okay, so I asked for the end of this week, you share a Google Doc with me. Sharing a Google Sheet is very similar. First thing you want to do is work on it. And then at any time, you can then submit. And you want to make sure that the link says anyone can view it. So mine does not say that down here, so I need to change that. Change anyone with the link can view. So there are at least 3 ways you can share a Google Doc or Sheet or any other thing. One is by getting a shareable link that anyone can view it. So I just got that. I'm going to stick that in the chat. If you want to get into the spreadsheet, you may. I have a timestamp variable Google attached to it, and I have the variable I want. Do we believe there's a true love or not? The other way to share is to put somebody's email address in here, right? So I have colleagues I work with, so I can pick their name, put it in there. If you share by name, then you should usually include a message as to why you're sharing it. And then that person, 2 things will happen. 1, they'll get an email to that address with a link to whatever I'm sharing, and they'll see my message. And 2, it'll appear in their Google Drive also. For assignments, I need you to submit something to me. So you can feel free to put my email address here to share with me, but you also need to get me that shareable link to submit in your assignments. Okay. So for sure you have to do this when you share stuff with me. You could do that by email. Also, my email address is listed in the syllabus. Okay, so so here we have this one true love thing. So what I'm going to do with this right now is I'm going to sort it. And when we get some more in there, I think. No, I just jumped around. So I highlight that, and I think I demonstrated this last class, but I teach several classes that I cover this in. Data is usually where I go to next, and then sort range, and then say, hey, it's got a header row, and I want to sort not by the timestamp, but is there a true love? And A to Z, Z to A doesn't matter in this case. So then it groups them together for me so I can easily count them. So what I want to do is I want to make a summary table to go with this. Anytime you edit data from a survey, you should not edit the original source. So usually what I do next is I make a new tab. So I'm just going to duplicate this. So now I have a copy, and it's the copy over here that I want to edit. Sometimes I make a whole new spreadsheet so I don't accidentally mess up this original one here, because I'm going to give this to the rest of the class who's online and not present with us right now. So later there'll be a whole bunch more entries here. I don't want to mess any of that up. So it definitely with Google Forms, we don't want to mess with where the form responses come in. So over to this tab here, and you can make a copy of this to work with on your own, or you can just kind of watch me do it here. What I want to do is I want to make a summary of this. So I would like to know response, and I would like to know the count, how many were in each one. So one response is I don't know. Another response is no. And another response is yes, right? Those are all the things I have to work with here. And I can just kind of look at these or count, or I can highlight them and see the count is 9 there. And there is a way to make the computer count for you. I'll go over that in another video or next week. So we're running out of time today. We have 5 there. And then the yeses, we have 4. Another word for count is frequency. So what I've created here is a frequency table for this data. And again, frequency just means count. Sometimes we also make what's called a relative frequency because just the number isn't all that meaning. So, oops, I did no twice there. This one should be a yes. So there were more than twice as many people that said, I don't know, compared to yes. There were about the same yeses and nos as there were I don't knows. Sometimes instead of just the count or the frequency, we do what's called relative frequency, which means out of the count, how many were there? So that's a proportion. We talked about that before. So relative frequency is just a proportion. Those proportions can be stated as fractions, decimals, or percents. And to get them, I would need to know a total. So I'm going to add a total row here. And in a spreadsheet to do a total, now I did some bad practices here, right? I looked at these and counted them, right? I really should have the computer count. And I kind of did by highlighting them and looking at the count down here, by highlighting them and looking at the count down there. If we have time in a couple minutes, I'll show how to make the computer count them in a different way. For the total, I should definitely have the computer do that. And to do that, I go equals and then type sum. And then I just highlight the values I want to sum and close the parentheses. The computer says you summed 18 things. And if I look at my data here, I have 19 rows with a header. So that means there's 18 results. And I'm going to highlight that to separate it from the rest of the data. Let's make this a little prettier. So to do the relative frequency, I'm going to use a formula. Anytime we do a formula, a calculation, you have to start with equals. And then I just click on the frequency and then divide by 18. And I'm going to show you 2 different ways to do it. This is one way. Enter. Google asked me if I want to autofill. Yeah, sure. And the last one, it says 1, which means 100%, which is the total. Usually we round these to be all the same. So I might say, hey, show me 2 decimal places. So about 50%, 28%, 22%, and 100% all the data. Or we could, instead of presenting it as a decimal, do it as a percentage. So we have many options on how to do that. Let's undo. I just want it to be a number. That's fine right there. So relative frequency just means take the frequency and divide by the total. Now I typed the number 18 even though it appears here. So I'm just going to repeat this again in a slightly different way. So again, given the frequencies and the total, To get the relative frequency, you just go equals, click on the frequency. Now earlier I went slash for divide and I typed 18. This time I'm going to click on the number 18 because I want to demonstrate how spreadsheets work when you use cell references like this. So I clicked on a cell. The computer said you clicked on cell E3 and then E6. Right? That's what it shows here. If I hit enter, I'm going to get the same exact number I see right there. 0.50, 0.5, they're the same number. I can put another 0 in there if it makes you feel better. Now, if I fill this down, watch what happens. Something went wrong. Here's what went wrong. When the computer recorded the formula equals E3 divided by E6, what it really thought was not E3, but go grab the cell that is 1, 2 to the right. And for this one here, it said go grab the cell that is 1, 2 over and 1, 2, 3 down. And if we look at the next cell, we can see that here it went and grabbed the number that is 2 to the left and divided by the one that is 2 to the left but 3 down, which is not where the total lives. Now, I do want the frequency to shift down each time in my formula, but I need to tell the computer to not change the total. So whenever you make a formula, by default, any cell reference is called a relative cell reference. It's not really thinking E3 here, it's thinking grab the thing 2 to the left, which is great when I'm on the next line here because I want the frequency that's 2 to the left, but the total is always in the same spot. So to tell it to not change that E6 when I copy it down, I don't want the 6 to change to a 7 or an 8. I put a $ in front of the 6 because that's what it's going to want to change when I copy it up and down. So when you copy formulas up and down references the row number. It's going to want to change it. By putting a $ in front of the row number, I said, hey, don't touch the 6. If I was copying this left or right, I would put a $ in front of the column letter. So now if I fill this down, right, the fixed version with the $ in it, it should always grab the total from the right spot. So I can see it did change to the new frequency. It did change to the new frequency, but it kept the total in the right spot. So spreadsheet trick, that's pretty powerful. That is the proper way to do these right here. Because if later I realize, oh, I miscounted the I don't knows, it's really 10 of them. This has the wrong denominator because I typed the number 18, now the number is 19. Whereas this one over here is always looking in the right spot for the right number. So this column right here, this was bad. Shouldn't have done it that way. This is the better way to do it here. And this is a trick I use all the time when I'm working with data calculations. So I'll definitely show this again in the near future. All right, so with a quantitative variable, we often need to summarize it. To summarize a quantitative variable, we have two things we can do. We can do a count, which is called a frequency, or we can do a proportion, which is called a relative frequency for that variable. Let's put that back to the way it was. All right, next, let's take a look at a two-way table. My drive, missing my drive. Too many tabs open.